Friends, the computer audio revival, so wrong on so many levels. So here I am in the future. My time machine has been a little unreliable lately, so I'm not sure how far, but contrary to the expectations of many, it's a lovely place. And among the benefits of the future, it's a lovely place to make music and record, or record and make music, if that's the way your priorities work. I can't tell you specifics because that would violate the laws of time travel and I'd get into deep trouble. But I can talk about something which, if you put your hand on your heart, you always knew was destined to happen. The computer audio revival. Yes, you already know about the vinyl revival, the cassette revival, the CD revival and the analog tape revival. You know about them from my YouTube videos. So now I'm going to tell you about the computer audio revival and why it's going to be so wrong on so many levels. Level 1. You're going to call me an old fuddy-duddy in a minute, so you should probably flex your fingers in anticipation of commenting. But yes, the screen. When I started recording, we used tape. Yes, analog tape, which I've already said in my 20-level video should most definitely not be revived. Ever. Believe it or not, tape didn't have a screen. You couldn't see what was on your recording. You could only listen. So we performed, recorded and listened. If there was anything wrong, we would do it again, or drop in the odd wrong note. Punch in, as the North Americans say. Do I need to tell you that many, many, many fine records were made this way? No one ever said, by golly, if only we had a screen we could do so much better. No, we didn't have screens and we didn't miss them. That changed for me in 1989. I'd been using a computer for MIDI at that time, obviously with a screen, but I want to stick to audio here, and for most of the 1980s, computers could not record audio. Slight memory haze warning. In 1989 or thereabouts, I was sent on a mission, probably by Sound on Sound magazine, but it could have been another, to attend the 12-inch remix of a song called Pop Music by a band called M. I say band, but I think in reality it was just one guy, Robin Scott, and the other contributors were, or functioned as, session musicians. The original Pop Music dated from 1979 and was, glory be, played on instruments. Computers had been invented, but as yet had little impact on music. But as you know, as the 1980s developed, things became all about sequencing, sampling, drum machines and rhythmic precision. So for 1989, the track was suitably updated in the modern style. Now, I can't remember the details and there was probably a lot of work I didn't see. But the session I attended was all about editing, which is why my memory tells me that this is the 12-inch remix. And the editing wasn't done on tape, but on a hard disk recording system. Fortunately, in the future, where we are going, we don't need screens. A quick PS on this one. I could have done the editing on tape in half the time. Level 2. So, in the future, we don't need screens, and neither do we need a QWERTY keyboard. Going back to analog multitrack tape for a moment, that doesn't need a screen. Remember all those great records recorded on tape? Guess what? It doesn't need a keyboard either. It seems a little bit crazy that computer audio is so dependent on the keyboard now. How did we let things slip so badly? What we did in the olden days was to write the instruments on a plastic scribble strip on the mixing console, abbreviated to no more than about 4 or 5 letters. For an album, since you might work a bit on one song, a bit on another, etc., you could scribble on a strip of masking tape stuck on top of the plastic. You'd store these strips stuck to the control room wall. It worked. So in the future, we've recognised that the QWERTY keyboard isn't helping our music, it's holding it back. Level 3. You know where I'm going here. The mouse. Yes, you've guessed it. Multitrack tape didn't have a mouse and didn't need one. Music does not need a mouse, and that's what people found out on their journey into the future. If you don't realise how crazy the mouse is, think about what you're doing. There's a pointer on a vertical screen that you control using a device on a horizontal surface. It's ludicrous. OK, we have tablets, but we still have all that pointing. Multitrack tape didn't need any pointing other than that reel over there. I'm going on about tape a bit, but this is to put things in perspective. Computer audio has a whole bunch of stuff that music simply doesn't need. Level 4. The operating system. Now, I have to comment on a source of confusion. Remember when your favourite operating system got updated with a fantastic new dark mode? No, that's not the operating system. That's the graphical user interface, or GUI. The GUI is not the operating system. It's the way that 20th and early 21st century humans interacted with the computer. Of course, here in the future, we don't need it. The operating system lives inside the computer and interacts with applications more so than humans. This is so that when a software developer creates a new app, they don't have to write memory management, keyboard and mouse scanning, display and print drivers. All that is already there in the operating system. OK, now that we know what we're talking about, what's the problem? Are you blind? There are two massive problems. Firstly, complexity. I remember back in the 1990s having a Macintosh computer and I knew the function of every file. Now the system folder on my Mac has no fewer than 29,222 files. That took a long time for my fairly fast Mac to count, and 29,222 is only how far it got before the spinning beach umbrella of doom. Does any single human being on the face of the earth know what they all do? Now, I'm a great believer in the maxim that things should be as complex as they need to be, but no more. So a space rocket is bound to be complicated. But as we found out in the future, too much complexity leads to instability. And if you remember the financial crash of 2008, well, let me tell you, there's something worse coming soon. You just don't know it yet, and it's all down to excessive complexity. And the other massive problem with operating systems, not saying that there are only two, I'm merely mentioning two. Why do they need to be updated so often? No, why do they need to be updated? Can't they just work? I used to think it was just a racket so that Apple and Microsoft could make bank. But upgrades, they're now free, so Apple and Microsoft must have other reasons. Linux too, and that's always been free. So every time there's an operating system upgrade, application and plugin developers have to play catch-up, resulting that any sensible user has to wait until all of the inevitable bugs have been found and neutralized. And this is a good time to mention that a fundamental principle of computing is that a software system can never be proven to work. Look up the halting problem if you're interested. Fortunately, in the future, we're done with all this nonsense. Another quick PS on this one. Yes, I know there has to be an operating system upgrade for Apple Silicon, for instance. I'm just saying that we're in an age of upgrades. It shouldn't always have to be like this. Level 5. I can't tell you what we have in the future to replace software because, as I said earlier, I'm not allowed to transmit any information into the past that you don't have access to already. But software, well, it was a great invention in its time. You can think of the computer as a general-purpose machine. It can perform any task you can write software for. Before the computer, well, we had machines, but they each could do only one job, maybe with small variations. But software isn't the best way of getting things done. I'll give you an example from your time period. Bitcoin. Simplifying here, Bitcoins are created by mining. Mining is a complex mathematical process that takes time. You used to be able to mine Bitcoins on a computer running mining software, but Bitcoin is designed to get harder and harder to mine as more Bitcoins are created. So computers became impractically slow. Miners turned to graphics cards, which can be programmed to mine Bitcoin faster than a general-purpose processor. But now they are too slow, so we have Antminer. Antminer is a hardware device, not a computer. Its hardware is etched into silicon specifically to mine Bitcoins. nothing more. It can't do word processing, it won't run your spreadsheet, and it certainly can't help you make music, unless you sample the sound of its incredibly noisy fan. So I'm not saying that this is what we use in the future, but it would, in your time period, be possible to make a similar hardware multi-track recording, editing, processing and mixing machine with its functions programmed physically rather than inefficiently through software. At this point, I'm hoping that you get the idea that the computer is not the perfect way to record and produce music. That's why here in the future, I firmly believe that the computer audio revival is so wrong on so many levels. Level 6. I'm going to skip over a few further items that, believe me, I could have droned on about at length. But I have a few. Plugins, and particularly skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism, a crazy word for a crazy idea. It means that a software interface looks like physical hardware, even if you can only interact with its knobs and switches using a mouse. If you want to get a perspective for how crazy it is, look at a video editing software like Adobe After Effects. And its massive, I mean massive, array of processes, effects, plugins and scripts. It would be mind-bogglingly crazy to make everything look like broken down equipment from the 1950s. Files. I mentioned earlier the incredibly high file count in my system folder. But what about a typical DAW session? I invite you to open up one of your recent sessions and run a file count. On the Mac, in List View, you can Command-Option-click the folder's disclosure triangle and get a count. On Windows, who knows? As I said earlier, excessive complexity is bound to lead to problems sooner or later. Perhaps not now, but the way things are going for you back in the past, complexity is only going to increase. Distractions. I don't need to say anything, do I? You know all about the distractions that computers cause. In the future, our recording systems just record. No distractions. Level 7. Here's the big one, and it's my last. Latency. I know I've been banging on about this before, but latency is an issue in digital audio. More so in computer digital audio because the computer is optimized for general purposes, not specifically for running digital audio workstation software. Latency builds up in analog to digital conversion, in the maze of the computer's central processor, in DAW software and particularly in plugins. Oh yes, mustn't miss out the digital to analog converter at the end of the chain. To give a quick example, you've built up a backing track, you've used as many plugins as you need to make it sound good, now you want to record the vocal. But the singer needs low latency in their headphones and you set the buffer to 64 samples. You've got to set the buffer. Grind and crash, your computer can't handle it. Yes, you can fix it. Bounce the backing track to stereo, deactivate all of the other tracks and let the singer perform to that. Oh, they want the kick to be louder. Bounce again. There's freeze as well, but it's hardly any better. It's a process of fixing problems that we don't have in the future. OK, there are systems like the Avid Carbon interface that has built-in DSP to run plugins with minimal latency. But latency still exists, and it will catch you out. Oh, and let me remind you that analog audio has zero latency, just like the systems that we run here in the future. So there we go. From here in the future, I can say without doubt that any possible computer audio revival is so wrong on so many levels. In fact, crazy beyond belief. But back in the 21st century, I said that about vinyl, cassette, CD and analog tape. Look where that got me. OK, I hope you saw this as a bit of fun, but it's a useful perspective. We could easily think that the way we record now is the only way there will ever be. No, there's something better around the corner and we'll love it when we get there. If there's anything you think I didn't mention, please let me know in the comments. If you disagree with anything that I say, also please comment, but tell me why you disagree. Saying that I'm talking a load of without further explanation will get you deleted. It's been very pleasant here in the future, but now I think I'll get back in my time machine. The question is, which one? See you soon.